Chaste. I think that's the word that most clearly describes my relationship with Cathy. Chaste. Not, I can assure you, my preferred state of bliss, but circumstance would allow little else. We were both students at the University College of South Wales in Cardiff. I was a graduate student studying the sciences. Cathy was a freshman. I can't remember exactly what it was she was studying. I'm not sure that I even knew at the time, or cared. As she was a particularly lust-worthy lass, my mind was not really on her studies. But I had a problem. Cathy was a local girl, and she still lived with her parents and 5 sisters. They were a good Catholic family, a good, strict Catholic family. I only saw Cathy once a week at the Saturday night dance. It was a bit of a meat market, but lots of fun. A young man by the name of Elvis was tearing up the music scene over in the United States, horrifying the older generation, just as their own bebopping had horrified their parents. Bill Haley and the Comets also came along about that time. Remember the twist? The dance hall was filled with wild, gyrating, sweaty bodies. But the older generation was right. All its uninhibited movement did bring out some pretty primordial urges, but in my case, all to no avail. The dances ended around 11, and most of the lads had the opportunity to walk their girls home. But Cathy lived about 3 miles away, and she had to take the after-dance bus to be home by midnight. That was her father's must-be-home-by time. But a casual comment by Cathy led to a potential solution to the problem. She told me that her home was close to the bus depot, and that she was always the last one dropped off, and it was always just before midnight. A quick mathematical calculation, I was after all a science student, suggested that I could walk her home in about the same time as she spent on the bus, and if we left a little early, maybe some time for a little dalliance here or there. But unfortunately, I was not the best of students, and my math was a little faulty. My attempt to walk home took longer than expected, and we were still about a quarter of a mile away at almost 12 o'clock. But Cathy knew a shortcut through the grounds of Llandaff Cathedral, a majestic structure originally founded in 1107, although most of the buildings was more modern, the North Tower, for example, being completed around 1500. The cathedral was surrounded by extensive grounds, mostly given over to an old cemetery. The shortcut was a narrow path through that cemetery, a path bordered by a privet hedge that had been taken over by brambles, hazelnut and hawthorn bushes. We quickly turned off the road adjacent to the old cathedral, and we made our way through the shortcut. No time for dalliance, no time at all. We would have been interrupted anyway, as we shared the shortcut with a drunk who staggered along in front of us, falling into the brambles a couple of times. Then he turned round and walked back past us, back to the road. We made it to Cathy's house just before the midnight deadline. A friendly, good-night, chaste peck on the cheek. There's that damn word again. And then she turned and went into the house. I then realized that I didn't know where I was. My only hope was to retrace my steps back to the cathedral, and then back to the road shortcut, and then back to the main road, and after that I was okay. But the church's tower, fortunately the church's north tower, silhouetted against the glow of the distant city, proved to be an effective landmark. So I found my way back to the cathedral, back to the path, and back onto the road. But I emerged into something very odd indeed. There was a tension in the air, almost viscous. There were about 20 men dressed in dark uniforms, and about 6 black cars with blue domes. Police? But why? I made my way through the throng. A polite, "Good evening, sir. Good night now, sir." The British police are so incredibly polite. But then I heard an angry, raised voice that froze me in place. "It's him! He's the one!" someone yelled. Instantly the police throng focused on me. One grabbed my arm. "This way, sir," I was instructed. No, ordered. I was pushed into the back of one of the police cars. "Chief Inspector would like to speak to you, sir." "What's going on?" I asked. But my questions were ignored. Then the inspector arrived, got into the back seat with me. First they took down the basic stuff: name, address, where were you going, where you coming from, and then the critical questions. "Were you with a young lady on the path through the cemetery about 15 minutes ago?" "Did you see that gentleman?" He pointed to the trunk. I said that I had. And then the really critical question: "Did you hear a scream?" "No," I replied, somewhat puzzled. "Well, a gentleman over there said he saw you in the path with a young lady, and that he said he then heard a scream." "Well, I certainly didn't hear one," I replied firmly. And then it dawned on me. They think I attacked Cathy. They think I raped her. "Where is the young girl now?" the inspector asked. "Well, she's home, probably fast asleep," I replied. "I'm afraid we're going to have check that out," said the inspector. "Now?" I asked. "Now," was a very stern reply. I gave them Cathy's address, and we set out towards her home. Just a few quick minutes in the police car. We arrived at the house, and the inspector got out of the car and marched quickly to the door and rang the bell. No reply, no response. He repeated the ring, and then followed up by loudly banging on the door. Finally the lights came on in Cathy's house, and an older woman, I presume Cathy's mother, opened the door, and after a few brief words she let the inspector in. So I was left in the police car with the driver. It was a nervous wait, a very nervous wait. Then, in the dim blue light of the car's instrument panel, I saw the driver's eyes in the rearview mirror, watching me, accusing, menacing, threatening me. "I didn't do anything," I said meekly. "That's what they all say," was the firm response. No polite "sir" with this policeman. "Well, why would I rape the girl?" I asked. "Happens all the time." "But if I raped her, why would I come back the same way?" He quickly cut me off. "You said you didn't know any other way back." "But I'm going to be a scientist," I wailed. "You should have thought of that." I didn't do anything." "That's what they all say." My every argument was brushed aside, my every defense rebuffed. I realized that I wasn't going to win this futile debate, so I lapsed into silence, into despair. I realized, probably irrationally, but it was very real at the time, that my career, my life, was out of my control at that moment. It depended on the discussions going on behind that closed door. What would Cathy say? Would they believe her? And so I watched that door and waited, waited, waited.